Are you ready to dive into some seriously thought-provoking stuff with me today?
Always.
Okay, fantastic. So we are tackling this really fascinating essay today.
Cool.
It's called, get this, Fe, Ciencia y Razón, una perspectiva necesaria,
Okay.
which translates to faith, science, and reason, a necessary perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, this essay, it really throws down the gauntlet, like challenging some huge assumptions we often have about how we get to the truth of things.
Yeah,
No?
I know what you mean.
We're going to explore this super intriguing idea that faith plays a much bigger role in science than a lot of folks might realize.
Right.
And the essay starts off with some really relatable examples that kind of bring this whole thing home for us.
Oh, that's good. Like what?
Well, like, think about it. How many times a day do you rely on some kind of technology that deep down you don't really understand how it works?
That's a good question.
Like, come on, we trust airplanes to fly.
Yeah.
We trust our phones to connect us across, like, continents.
Right, that's true.
But are we all, like, secretly aeronautical engineers? Yeah, I know I'm not.
Oh, definitely not me either.
But we still get on those planes.
Yeah.
So in a way, aren't we placing a lot of faith in that whole system?
I think that's exactly the point the essay's making. We're trusting the expertise of all those people who designed and built those incredibly complex systems.
Right.
Even though, we don't understand every single little scientific detail behind how it all works, that trust, that's what the essay's saying, is a form of faith.
Yeah.
We aren't constantly reapproving like the laws of physics ourselves, are we?
No way. Yeah.
No. We're relying on this huge network of knowledge and expertise that's been built up over centuries.
Oh, totally. And that's such an interesting way to look at it because it kind of throws a wrench in this whole idea that science is like purely about proof, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The essay even goes so far as to question this whole notion of, provable science. Think about it. Have you ever personally proven the laws of physics?
No.
No, most of us haven't.
I am taking their word for it, absolutely. So how is that really that different from accepting, say, religious beliefs based on scriptures or like what religious leaders teach?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. The essay argues that both involve a certain degree of, trust and acceptance.
Okay.
We rely on the scientific community, on textbooks, research papers, all that to, shape our understanding of science, right?
Right.
And the act of relying on some external source for knowledge, well, it's actually really similar to how religious faith works, isn't it?
I guess so, yeah.
Both involve placing our trust in something that, we haven't personally verified.
Huh. So if we're all placing trust in something, even in science, it makes you wonder how solid is the ground we're actually standing on, especially when you think about how much science is always changing.
Oh, that's a key point the essay raises. What we think of as scientific truth, it can shift and evolve over time, New discoveries pop up, old theories get challenged, and our understanding of the universe just expands.
Right.
Like, take the history of medicine. What doctors believed 100 years ago is totally different from what we know today.
Oh, absolutely. It's so true. And, it makes me think about all the times in school where we learn something as if it was fact.
Yeah.
And then later it's like, oh, whoops, that's not quite right anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I remember being taught that atoms were like the smallest things. They were indivisible, right?
Right.
And then along comes protons, neutrons, electrons.
Yeah.
It's like science keeps revealing deeper and deeper layers of reality.
Precisely. And the essay kind of contrasts this with, say, the core teachings of Christianity, which have stayed pretty much consistent over the centuries. Mm-hmm. It's not about saying, like, one is right and the other is wrong. It's more about highlighting the different ways we arrive at what we believe to be true. It makes you really think about the nature of knowledge itself.
Yeah, for sure. And how much of what we think we know is actually based on faith, even if it's faith in the scientific process.
Exactly. And if faith is playing a role in science, well, then where else does it pop up in our lives? The essay really digs into that by asking this huge question, where does morality come from?
Oh, wow.
Even people who, reject organized religion, they often still have strong beliefs in values like justice and equality, right?
That is such a fundamental question. And to be honest, it's something I've really wrestled with myself.
Yeah.
If there isn't some kind of higher power calling the shots on what's right and wrong, then where do those values even come from?
That's where things get really fascinating. The essay suggests that, without a higher power, those values might just end up being totally arbitrary, basically.
Oh, wow.
Just social constructs that could change depending on the time and place. And yet, don't we see people react to injustice with this, like, deep conviction? It's
Yeah.
like this gut feeling that something is wrong, even if it doesn't, directly affect them personally. That points to something deeper, doesn't it?
It really does. It's like we have this built-in sense of fairness, of morality that goes way beyond just what's, convenient or socially acceptable at any given moment.
Exactly. And the essay's point is that this could point to some kind of like implicit faith in a moral order that might actually have religious roots, even if it's operating completely subconsciously.
Hmm.
It's not about, forcing anyone to believe in any particular religion, of course. It's more about acknowledging that our sense of right and wrong might be more complex than we often give it credit for.
So even if we think we're being, totally rational and logical, maybe there's this underlying element of faith that's actually shaping our sense of morality, whether we realize it or not. That's a pretty mind-blowing concept, isn't it?
It really challenges our assumptions about how we form our beliefs and how we make judgments about the world.
Mm.
And the essay uses this line of reasoning to kind of point out the limitations of a purely secular worldview when it comes to explaining those deep values we all seem to hold.
Wow. I feel like we've just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to unpack in this essay.
There is. It leads to some really interesting questions about the relationship between science and religion and the different ways we approach truth. And I think we should dive into that next.
Okay, so we've been talking about how faith has this kind of like hidden role in both science and even in our ideas about morality, even if we don't always realize it's there. It's making me think that maybe science and religion aren't really as opposed to each other as we often hear. What does the essay have to say about how they relate?
Well, that's one of the most interesting parts of this whole essay. It doesn't try to set up science and religion as fighting against each other. It actually says that they both offer valuable ways of understanding the world, but just in different ways.
Oh, okay, I see.
Science, it's really good explaining how things work, the mechanisms, the stuff behind the natural world. But when we get to those really big why questions, the ones about meaning and purpose, science doesn't always have the answers, does it?
You mean those existential questions that keep us up at night?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what is consciousness? Or does the universe even have a purpose? I feel like those questions are just part of being human.
Exactly. And the essay is arguing that religion often steps in to offer answers where science kind of hits a wall. It provides that framework for understanding our place in the universe, a sense of meaning and purpose. The point the essay makes isn't that one replaces the other. It's more like they offer totally different lenses to view the world through.
So it's not science versus religion. It's more like science and religion, each one addressing different parts of the human experience.
Yeah, it's like they each have their own lane, right?
Right, right.
Science is figuring out the mechanics, religion grapples with the meaning.
Ooh, that's a great way to put it. And recognizing that difference, that could be what helps us see that science and religion aren't as incompatible as we tend to assume. It's about like recognizing those different ways of knowing, how they can exist together, maybe even complement each other. This is really making me rethink the whole idea of faith. It's so much bigger than just religion, isn't it? We're all exercising faith in all sorts of ways every single day.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a big part of what the essay is asking us to do, be more aware of where we're putting our faith. It's not about just blindly accepting anything. It's more about being aware of those frameworks that we use to interpret the world.
Yeah.
Whether we're trusting the authority of science or we're relying on our intuition or we're embracing the ideas of a religion, we're always making choices about what to believe and who to trust.
So are you saying that in a way, we're all people of faith, whether we admit it or not?
I think in a way, yeah. The essay wants us to really look at where we place our faith and why. It's not about saying one type of faith is better than another, but it's about seeing that faith, no matter what form it takes, plays a huge role in how we understand the world and where we fit in it.
Man, that is really making me think. We spend so much time arguing about the right answers, but maybe it's just as important to figure out what lens we're using to ask the questions in the first place.
Right. It's about what they call intellectual humility, admitting that we don't have all the answers and our understanding of everything is always changing. The essay really pushes back against this idea that science is the only way to truth. It highlights where a purely rational approach falls short when we try to understand the universe and ourselves.
It feels like the essay is giving us permission to just embrace the mystery of it all. Like to admit that there are some things we may just never fully understand.
Exactly. It encourages us to be okay with uncertainty, to be open to different ways of knowing, and to approach these big questions with curiosity, but also a healthy bit of skepticism.
So instead of getting stuck in those debates about proving or disproving things, maybe it's about finding ways to expand how we see the world, looking at things from different perspectives, and admitting there might be multiple paths to understanding.
I like that. And the essay argues that this kind of open-minded approach, the one that embraces reason and faith, it can actually help us get a much richer, more nuanced understanding of ourselves and the world.
I love that. So basically, the essay is saying that we're all exercising faith, right? It doesn't matter if it's faith in science or religion or something else. What's important is recognizing that and being aware of where we're putting our trust. Is there anything else in the essay that we should, like, ponder?
Yeah, it actually ends with this really thought-provoking question that I think is worth sharing with our listener.
Okay, lay it on me. Hit me with that final mind-blowing thought.
The essay says the next time somebody tells you that science is purely rational and that religion is just faith, you ask them this: have you personally proven every single scientific claim that you believe?
Ooh, that's a good one. A real mic drop moment, right?
Right. It makes us realize that even our most deeply held beliefs are often built on
It's
trust.
like a gentle reminder to check our intellectual arrogance at the door, you know?
Exactly. It's a reminder that we're all just on this journey of understanding, and that journey, it needs both reason and faith, questioning and trusting.
It's all about finding that balance, right? Recognizing that both reason and faith have a role in how we see the world.
Precisely. It's not about picking one side over the other. It's more about seeing that they can work together and even make each other stronger.
This whole conversation has honestly been so insightful. I feel like I'm seeing this whole relationship between science and religion in a completely new light.
I'm really glad to hear that. The essay really pushes us to move past those simple either-or categories and really embrace how complex human thought and belief actually are.
And honestly, it's kind of liberating. It takes the pressure off of feeling like we need to have all the answers perfectly figured out right now.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the journey of exploring and discovering and being open to the idea that what we understand will keep changing.
So to kind of wrap this all up, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from this deep dive for our listeners?
I think the essay is ultimately encouraging us to pay more attention to how we use faith, whether it's faith in science, religion, or any other system of belief. It's about asking those questions, being critical, but also staying open-minded and recognizing that even our most deeply held beliefs come down to trusting something or someone.
That's beautifully put. It reminds us that trying to understand things is an ongoing process, and both reason and faith have a part to play in shaping how we see the world.
And that by embracing both, we can end up living a much richer, more fulfilling intellectual and spiritual life.
Well, on that thought-provoking note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive for today. We really hope you've enjoyed exploring these ideas with us, and we hope you keep pondering those big questions, keep searching for truth, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.